Welcome to week number 3 or 4 of the fall anime season, and things are going extremely well. There are like 7 or 8 good shows going on at the moment, and I'm just running out of things to like say about all these shows because there's so many of them at this point. It's like there might be like actually 6 or 7 good shows, and we haven't even got Psycho Pass yet. Now, I don't really want to talk too much about Psycho Pass. The first episode is supposed to be coming out tomorrow morning, but that's only in Japan as far as I know, and nobody's really licensed it for streaming in the West, so we won't get anything watchable until the weekend, probably, if anyone's on it. But it seems like most of the people aren't that interested in this season of Psycho Pass because I haven't seen all that much enthusiasm in terms of fan subbers going after it, but the raws are out. So yeah, this is the best way to start an episode about Ascendance of a Bookworm, is to talk about Psycho Pass. Anyway, the show we're talking about today is Ascendance of a Bookworm, which is like this weird show that came out of nowhere, and I completely dismissed it because it was isekai, or was labeled as isekai. But this show is isekai in the way that Log Horizon is isekai, in the sense that that's the way they set up the world, but everything else that has to do with it really doesn't have much to do with isekai. But Log Horizon kind of deals more with the fact of how they were different people in a different life and they turned into their game avatar. So you have some people who played as a different gender now have to deal with the fact that they are that gender now, and some people like look vastly different from how they were in real life. And there's all that kind of stuff that happens in Log Horizon, which deals with the fact that it's a game. But in this show, it's basically like Spice and Wolf and Log Horizon had a baby, and you have this really cool show about a person who actually died in the real world and is reborn in another world, as a little kid who's like extremely frail and weak and sick, and she can't really do anything, but she has all the knowledge that she had when she was living in our world, and she just so happens to be a librarian, which means that she's read many books, and she's very enthusiastic about having read those books and reading more books. And it means that she basically knows a lot about making things. She's very handsy, not handsy, she's very handy, my bad. She can make baskets, she can make paper, she can make all these kinds of stuff. And we're on episode 4 at this point. First 3 episodes are already out. It's on Crunchyroll, link in the description as always. If you want to watch it, you can watch it right now because it comes out on Wednesdays, and even Crunchyroll is not pushing this show as much as they probably should because it doesn't show up in the first page of their simulcasts. They still have shows from the last season up there, but this is like down in the, if you click show all simulcasts, it's like another 4 lines down if you scroll down, and it airs at 9:30 a.m. on Wednesdays Pacific time. So if you want to catch it then, you can catch it then. As far as the staff of the show goes, since I didn't cover it in my preview, I thought I might as well cover everything to do with the show now, and I skipped 3 episodes, so I feel like I owe a little bit of explanation for why that happened. The staff of the show, as far as I know, the light novel is written by a female author, which is really cool because we don't really get to see that all that much, and there are a few directors and female authors in this season, so that's also really cool to see. And it provides, I think, kind of a different feel for the show, mainly because we look at it from the point of view of this, like, I'm guessing 20-something woman who died in our world and went to a different world, and now she's a little kid. So one of the first things that she makes is shampoo, because people don't bathe in this world. It's kind of like a middle-aged European village that she gets teleported into or moved into, and they have like very low hygiene, like generally they had back in the day. I don't know if the bubonic plague has already come and gone, but we don't know. And the living conditions are pretty bad. She lives in this really small kind of one-room place with her older sister and both of her parents. And her sister immediately like tries to help her. Extremely nice family. But we see that like sense of weirdness that you have when you're just placed into a family and you're told that these are your parents, but she doesn't actually know them as her parents. She can only recall her host's memories of what it would have been like to be in this family. She can't actually like feel the emotions or anything. It's kind of just like information that's available to her, it seems, and emotions aren't really that available. So she works through this to get to a point where she can like, first of all, the thing is, her body is so weak that she can't even walk from her house to the market. She has to be carried around everywhere, and just walking down a flight of stairs is enough to exhaust her completely. As for the director of the show, the director is a director who's done like Shin-chan and more like children-oriented stuff. So when I saw that, I thought this show was going to be more like childish and things like that. But, some of the best things come from when you can only do limited things with the medium. And it seems that these limitations have created a gem in this sense, because this show comes off almost like a infotainment type show in a way that Dr. Stone, I thought, would do more of, but actually ended up doing a bit less. Like Dr. Stone, if you read the manga, which I ended up reading some of, just because I was tired of the anime for a little bit, the Dr. Stone manga comes off as like leaning very heavily into like the kind of slapstick comedy type stuff, which makes sense because the writers of that manga used to do comedy stuff before they did Dr. Stone, so it makes sense that they lean towards that, and that's really where the strength of that manga is. But the strength of this anime, and I haven't read the light novel, but there might be a manga adaptation in the future given that now it's an anime. So we're working backwards here in some sense, but if they do release a manga, I would love to read it, because the commenter who told me about the show also said that the light novels have more details than are given in the show, which surprised me because the show is so insanely detailed already. The show is pretty insanely detailed about things like making papyrus. Like the main character spends a lot of time figuring out how to make paper, and first of all, books were very expensive back then, which she finds out. So it's almost like her historical knowledge of things helps her like navigate in this world. And with just 3 episodes, I'm completely tapped into this. Also, I made a tweet about how the main character in the show made a reference to Yasunari Kawabata's Snow Country. It wasn't even like a prolonged mention. It was just like a tic-tac mention that she made, and we moved on. But I had to rewind and make sure that it was like actually what she said, because I was like, holy crap, this is supposed to be a children's anime, and they're making references to like extremely famous Japanese literature. So I was like, okay. This might be interesting. So after 3 episodes of this, I'm completely bought in. This might be my Wednesday show from now on, for sure. So expect more videos of this going forward. I don't really know how I'm going to cover it, because it's very straightforward in the sense that it's kind of like a Breaking Bad episode, in that she's faced with one problem after another, or The Martian if you prefer, and she has to solve them with the materials that she has in hand, and everyone around her just has to accept that she knows everything despite being like 5 years old. When she invented shampoo, if my kid invented shampoo, I'd be like, what just happened? But that was the first episode that she invented shampoo, and now we're like in episode 4 and she's invented so many things. This is really cool. We don't really know like the reason why she got moved to this world. It's not important in an isekai sense, and in that sense it's an isekai, but I think it stitches together the best aspects of like there's been so many shows where people bring powers from their own world, like the one where his mom goes with him. That's a comedy thing. The one where he brings a smartphone with him. The isekai genre is like well tapped out at this point. But I feel like this really has very little to do with isekai, and it's more to do with just kind of marshalling your way out of a situation that you may not want to be in. So with that 6.5 minute, 8.5 minute intro, let's get into episode 4 of Ascendance of a Bookworm. Also, the reason that they have gradients in their hair is because she invented shampoo in the first episode. Before that, it was all just matte, and now everyone in her family all have like shiny hair because she invented shampoo, which is super cool. Also, because her hair was like so matte, like in our modern world, if you haven't taken a shower in like 2 days, you feel horrible and like really sticky and gross just because we're used to being clean all the time. But that really wasn't like a problem that people had back in the day. And she, being from our world, felt so uncomfortable with her hair that she had to like invent a stick to put through her hair to like keep her hair up. And there's like cultural practices where they're not allowed to have all of their hair up, being young girls. So she had to like make a bun at the top and leave the rest of her hair down. And these are all just like little details I don't think you would find in a show that wasn't, first of all, written by a woman, and also like the anime is written by a woman as well. So like these like kind of slice of life details for me make the world feel much more lived in than like Dr. Stone, where he finds sulfur in a pit on a volcano somewhere. Now I know that in Dr. Stone it's like a completely different situation, but that's like the closest comparison you can get to this. I feel like Log Horizon is a much closer comparison because you get put into a world where there's already like a civilization existing. But these are like the 2 main shows that I'm going to be making comparisons to. So her like MacGyverness and ability to put stuff together isn't just big stuff like something that could make books very accessible. It's also like the tiny stuff, like her making soup for her family. That's what makes like the world of this show feel so much more like impactful to me. Because if you're just talking about somebody making a printing press in this world, it's like, how does that affect the common person who lives there? But her making shampoo means that like when people see her family's silky hair, all the buildings on her street are going to be like, hey, I want silky hair. How did you do that? I'm like, oh, you squeeze this fruit into this water and you put it on your hair and it makes it real nice. That's kind of how like inventions impact change from the grassroots level instead of something that requires a lot of capital to be invested into it. And I don't know if the writer actually thought about all that. I tend to overthink things, but I thought that was really cool. Just from even the first minute when she invented shampoo, I was like, I'm all in on this show. Another thing that I don't miss about this setting, people, like we saw this very recently with that World War II like COD video game where people were like, there were no female soldiers back then or whatever. It's like, yeah, we know people made mistakes in the past, but we don't have to recreate those mistakes again and again. When we show that, we can show a better version of the world. It's not like it's completely historically accurate anyway. And one of the things in this show that I like a lot is that parts of it are historically accurate. The parts that could lend to like a more accurate retelling of the story, like things that wouldn't make sense if they changed, but other things they just straight up removed, which make the show to me like way better. Like for example, in 1500s Europe, like they wouldn't even allow girls to leave the house at all, much less learn to read or write. And here her dad is sending her to another dude's like assistant office to learn how to read and write, which to me is like, did you really need to include that like patriarchy type stuff, that paternalization, that like talking down to-ness? Did you need to include that in this show? And to me, the answer is no. Like, we don't really need to see that. And it's great that they didn't include that because it makes it much more like straightforward what she has to do. She doesn't have to like topple a system of like people who talk down to women again and again. She can just go learn how to read and write. Not to mention, she's insanely good at learning how to read and write because she's already learned how to read and write once. But if you think about it, like, even if you just presented with learning a new language at whatever age you are, to me, like, this concept of learning a new language seems so daunting that I wouldn't even try at this point. But her, despite being like way older than me probably, when she died, she comes back to this child body and she's like, oh, what's this? I want to learn this whole alphabet, because she knows that this is the language of this world and she has no choice but to learn it. And I think that's one of the best things about her, like just complete acceptance of her situation. There's a point in episode 2 or something where she like tells herself like, oh, this is my dad, this is my mom, like my old life doesn't exist anymore, my old name is not my name anymore, I'm mine now, that's who I am, I just have to commit to this. And I think just her enthusiasm and willingness to go forward with things, similar to The Martian, where he doesn't really get down on himself at any point except the very end. I think that really adds to the punch of the show, where it's like, it asks you the question almost implicitly, like, what would I do if I were in this situation? Like, would I be able to do the things that she does? I'd be like, no way. I'd probably have died in the bed in the first 3 days just because I would have given up and been depressed because I'm now in 1500s Europe. Because I'm like Senku, I'm a science boy, so me not seeing people go to space or whatever would be so depressing that it would completely KO me. But she like comes back from the brink of death, of sickness, is now able to like walk around. And I think it's really important to show that she's actually this frail, like weak person and not some like normal person, because even a normal person has abilities to do stuff and like work in the farm and things like that, which she just can't do. Like, she can't even walk downstairs. And if you've read any kind of like older fiction from like the 1800s, late 1700s, or even early 1900s, it's like there's always people who are just like frail, weak people in the books, always, because that was just a reality at the time before modern medicine was invented, that you just had these people who just couldn't do stuff in life because they got sick at some point, were never able to recover, or they got TB and they were never able to recover and they just died. That's just what happened to them. So there was just this acceptance of some people are just weak, and these people often were like left to do their own things. Of course, that's in like privileged families. That's why a lot of like poets and artists and everything started out life getting some kind of scarlet fever or some severe illness, and they were never able to recover from it fully. But so they were just left to do to their own devices and not really put into the whole system, and they ended up doing all kinds of cool stuff. and she kind of has that same role. Like, it's kind of a blessing her sickness, even though it like robs her of her strength and, vivaciousness. She now has some kind of freedom to do what she wants, which she otherwise might not be, because her older sister Turi is like being ushered from point to point to point in the road of this life that she leads in this middle-aged Europe setting, where she's a child. She learned how to make baskets or whatever. She went with her mom and learned how to sew, and at 7 she's going to be baptized and become a seamstress apprentice, and she's going to become a seamstress, and that's just going to be her life from then on. It seems like Mind has more freedom in that sense, which is, I think, another cool part about the setting of the show. I'm talking way too much about the show, but I haven't talked for 3 episodes, so consider this like an all-in-one bonus package. Also, these people have these crazy hair colors, but that's canon. Like, she mentioned several times throughout the show that what's up with everyone's hair? Why is it all weirdly colored? Which is like one of the first times I've ever seen anyone mention why everyone has weird hair in anime, and I love it. I love it even more because of that. Okay, continuing. Okay, so you might not know this, but librarians actually like spend a lot of time educating people about resources, how to research, how to use the things that they have at the library to its maximum extent. I have a friend who is a librarian. She's always going on about notes that she's made to educate people. So her making this observation is not just because she's older than she looks. It's because she knows how to teach children, and she's been doing it for a while, because that's part of the librarian's job, is to interact and teach people how to use the library. So it's just like these little details that get me every time in the show. It's like the tiniest stuff that you would only know if you like were very familiar with the material being covered. But when you do see it, you like feel some type of way about it. It's kind of like an Easter egg, but it's not just a boondoggle that's left there. It's actually like meaningfully contributing to the forward motion of the episode, which is another reason I like the show. Okay, I'm going to stop talking at some point. Yo, that's brutal. I guess they don't have school hours back in the day. If you showed up, you only go home when the teacher lets you go home. Dang, Mine, she looks young, but she's got that killer teacher instinct still. I love those little cartoon segments that they do too. It reminds me heavily of the like Dr. Stone stuff, but it's so cute and wholesome. That's what, like, number one word I would use to describe this show is just completely wholesome. And that kind of makes sense because the studio that did the show primarily does children's stuff. And children's stuff you have to make wholesome, because like if parents see it at any point, you can't have some weird darkness, kind of Goblin Slayer weirdness going on. Even if in just terms of the aesthetic and the palette and everything, you have to make it like completely palatable and wholesome, which is why I think this show isn't being taken seriously. But if you just look at it on a surface level and dismiss it because it's being done by a studio that does children's stuff, I think you're going to miss out on some good storytelling here, because this is like just a bite-sized chunk of like goodness that you can just consume and be like, yes, my day is now 10% better because I watched this show. And that's like, what more can you ask from a show, right? It's just a show that is telling you about this girl making her way through this European world with clever solutions. It's like Spice and Wolf in the sense of the setting and everything. So it's a great show. If you haven't watched it, you can already tell that I really like it. And I love wholesome shows like this. I'm a wholesome boy. I like all kinds of wholesome media, and this is just perfect. Yo, what? Getting called out by a 5-year-old kid is nuts. And I know he's only concerned for her health, but dang, you gotta feel bad now. You just have to feel bad now. And she's trying to rush it. Also, if this was Senku, he would be like, let me invent antibiotics to save myself. But she's just like, yeah, I'm sick, probably have TB, but you know what? It's cool. I'll just recover naturally, which is never going to happen. She's just going to be weak forever. Her time, you could argue, would be better spent inventing antibiotics, but I love that she's so nerdy that she only wants to make books. I love this show. this is just explaining the concept of books to a kid who's never seen or heard of books or even writing is like also nuts. But she's so like hell bent on finding a way to write stuff and make books that she doesn't even consider that really the easiest way to go would be to teach someone how to make paper from like tree milk pulp or whatever, instead of making clay tablets, because clay tablets great for long-term storage, very inconvenient for any kind of information sharing at all. They're incredibly heavy, don't contain much information, hard to make. Maybe not harder to make than books, but I feel like once you get the book thing down, the paper just comes out. But I love like how she doesn't even think about any of this, like the long-term ramifications at all. She just wants to make a book. And I think that kind of single-minded drive is something we can all identify with, and I think it improves the show in a way that otherwise it would be weird. Like if she thought in a consequentialist way and like, what could I do to improve society at this moment? I feel like it wouldn't be as relatable. And that's why I didn't really vibe with Dr. Stone as much. And I ended up not watching like after episode 13 or so. But this show, it's like she only does stuff that like affects her personally. Like Senku will make something to treat somebody else, or like invent sulfur to ward somebody off or whatever. Invent antibiotics purely for other people. Doesn't affect him. He's completely detached from the situation. And that's why I found it very hard to relate with him as a protagonist, because he's not really struggling in any sense. He's just doing stuff. And everything that he does to help other people is just to help other people. But mine's like, I want to make books. That's what I want to do. That's like my goal in life, is to make books, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make books, and I don't care what else could be more useful to me, like actually antibiotics. But that's why you like mine as a protagonist. Shout out Lutz for having an actually cool dream. Okay. I would like to see him travel to other cities too, because I want to see what's going on in the other cities. This world is kind of like our world, but just enough different that you can't just copy paste everything you know about this world to that world. Like the fruits are different, the people have weird hair for some reason, and like even though the political system seems to be kind of the same, we don't really know what the continents look like or anything. So it's like genuine sense of like wonder and excitement when you do find something new, which is not something you could do if it was the same exact world and you just move back in time, right? So you can see into the future to what's going to happen. This is kind of like a translational movement, like you went back in time and to another world line where things are completely different. So Lutz, I support you in your dream. Go like build a ship and sail around the world or something. Just don't kill people, that's bad. Okay, this is more of an emotional thing, but it's like she came into this world, she didn't know anybody, she didn't like anybody, she had no emotional attachments to anyone, but now it's been like months and months and months, I think maybe a year almost, and she's forged like this little patch of earth in this world which she can call home, and she has these people who she likes now, and she's found something that she can do, something that she can hope to improve in the future, and that's really like the most important part of her development here in this world. And this is why I like this show. It's like everything that she does is to like make her life better, but by doing so she also like affects the people around her, but she's not doing it in like a selfish way, like, oh, I'm gonna get mine and you can get yours too if you want. It's more like, I will do these things that help people, but they also help me. And that personality of hers is what I think is the coolest part, because also she's emotionally affected by the outcomes of things, like we saw with the clay tablets earlier in this episode, is that when her efforts do get stifled, it's like, oh, it actually means a big deal, because she spent like 2 weeks in bed with a fever, just suffering just to get to this point. Where these people can go to the forest every day. Like she started so far below everyone else just because she's so weak and so frail, and she gets sick all the time, that when she does something this monumental, it's like an even bigger accomplishment than it already is, and that she's able to appreciate that, and that those that are around her are also able to appreciate that and are willing to help her, even though she really doesn't have like any reason to require help from them. Like, what do they have to gain by making her clay tablets or whatever? They're just being nice to her, and that's like, it's good to see like things are being reciprocated. Like she invented things for them, they're able to help her, and she's just building this community around herself that's just becoming bigger and bigger, and her sphere of influence is growing. My throat is gone, my voice is gone from talking about the show so much. Okay, continuing. This is what makes me wonder if like her being in a child body doesn't also affect some things about her, because like mind and body are kind of like inextricably tied together, right? So she can't just be like completely whatever age she was before with her mind now in this body, because she seems to have this like elevated ability to learn things, and also like the kind of like she doesn't require a long time to form emotional attachments, which is something you see of children. Like they'll meet someone, they'll be their best friend in a day, whereas when you're more old and jaded, it's like it takes a long time to warm up to somebody and actually like accept that they don't want to kill you or whatever. So with her able to make like, or if it's not, then it means the impact that this world has had on her is even bigger and more profound than we previously had thought. Because if she's just a normal person, that means her ability to learn things quickly is purely because of her own abilities and not because of some like enhancement because she's in a child body. And two, it's because the reason she loves her mom and her parents and her sister and everything else in this world is not because she's young and more emotionally like malleable. It's because they've had such a like, you know, deep impact on her life that she's able to warm up to them that quickly, even though she is old. Either way, cool detail. Moving on. We're almost done. Really cool like visuals in the ending too there. Watch that fully. Okay.
はい、変な人と口聞いちゃダメだよ。
Whew. Okay. That was episode 4 of Ascendance of a Bookworm, and this show is going as good as ever. I feel like if you don't like the show after watching what little you saw of it in this episode, that I feel like you're not going to get it, and that's completely fine. If you're looking for something with more conflict, with more like stakes, maybe with like people actually like fighting each other, you're not going to find it in this show, I don't think. But if you're looking for like character development, in the sense that a person coming to grips with an isekai. Also, this is the first time the studio has done isekai, if I can judge by their past works. So it seems like they wanted to do a creative look into it, and they found this piece of media, Honzuki no Gokokujo, which was a light novel, and there is a manga actually. They just finished the first run of the manga. The second run of the manga is coming soon. Because it's light novel, I guess they're doing arcs or whatever. I don't know exactly. Tell me. I'm not going to read the light novel, but I'll read the manga, maybe. Really solid show. It's on Crunchyroll, so it's like readily available if you want to see it. I don't think there's any reason not to watch this. The pacing is good if you watch it back to back to back. I ended up watching 3 episodes in one night, and it was perfect. There was enough going on that I wasn't bored at any time, but it wasn't like being rushed along by event after event, which leads me to believe that this season is going to be paced pretty well. There are 14 episodes, so it's like 1 core plus a bonus, which is a good length, I think. If you stretched it too far, I feel like we'd get kind of lost with what happened. I would like to see a time skip at some point, because there's only so much she can do when she's 5. If you look at season 1 of Log Horizon versus season 2 of Log Horizon, season 1 was all about like making food, getting the world set up, protecting adventurers from not getting killed by guilds, and season 2 was more about like establishing a state and like buying up land and things like that. And I'd really like to see this show go into that, but I don't think you can with her at her present age. Now, she doesn't need to be much older. Like if you look at a Joan of Arc type story, Joan of Arc was only like I think 12 or 13 when she first made her appearance into the French like scene. So something in that sense where she can still be praised for being young and knowing all the things that she knows, but she's not like an actual child. And also maybe her weaknesses are diminished a little bit, and she doesn't have to worry so much about being actually bedridden after going to the forest once. That would be nice too, because I feel like this journey of dealing with her sickness is part of her overall journey of like coming to accept this world and like making it a place where she really wants to live, like with readily available books and like where information is freely disseminated, because as a librarian, that seems like that's one of her passions. What else to say about this show? Like, every show just looks really good nowadays. I don't know what people are doing, but like every show has a borderline floor of what it looks like, and there's not really much to complain about. This show heavily utilizes that self-colored lines but slightly darker that people have been using for a while now, where it's not just the same color as what's inside the line. It's slightly darker to indicate a boundary, but it's not as like kind of cut and dry as a black line. And I think this style is like really picking up. We saw it a couple of years ago, but now it seems to be just ubiquitous and everywhere. Extremely solid show in my opinion. All aspects of it are pretty much very acceptable. Like it's like solid 7 to 8 out of 10 show for me. But what could take it to another level is like how it deals with her transition up the ladder of influence, because it seems very clear that she's now like moved from just her sister to like her family and surrounding friends. And it seems to me like with her next invention, she's going to influence the neighborhood. But I might be completely misreading this, and it could just be her making cool stuff for her and her family, and that would be fine by me too. Ascendance of a Bookworm, I think that title is a reason that it's not picking up as much, even though it does accurately describe what happens in the show. You can't, it's not really, you can't do anything about that. The light novel title is way, way longer, as usual. Light novel titles are crazy. But solid show. If you want to watch it, it's on Crunchyroll, freely available. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video in this crazy fall 2019 anime season.